Hey Ross, how are you?
Rohan, how are you, buddy?
Doing well, thanks. I love the series, and you're an
Oh,
inspiration, man. You're just so badass. But so I just wanted to like get started with, since you're all working with Chris Hemsworth on this, who we've all like the world is kind of all seen as like this god-like figure on screen. It's like, but the series makes him feel very human. So like, what did you sort of learn about him, like working that intimately with?
yeah. I'm glad you said that, Rohan, just because I think it was like a testament to his character that he was so prepared to be a beginner again. And we talk about the ice swimming so often because it was just completely alien to his physiology. We went from, it was like 40 degrees, Australian summer, Byron Bay, gorgeous surfing, sun is shining. And then just 24 hours later, we were in the Lofoten Islands with only 5 days. So there was no sort of period of easing into it. As soon as we landed, I was like, right, we need to start throwing ourselves off the harbour, and into the water. And I think it was just his ability to learn. And also, I talk about a lot about his work capacity, just your body's ability to perform and positively tolerate training of a given intensity or duration, sort of coupled with his work ethic. That I suppose the training that we put in place, I say this a lot, I wouldn't recommend it to like 99.999% of people. It's almost like the Bulgarian training method, where the Bulgarians produce more Olympic weightlifters than anywhere else in the world, despite being so small. But they broke more champions than they made because they just lifted heavy every single day, 5, 7 hours a day, 365 days of the year. Whereas Chris was almost like that Bulgarian athlete who was able to tolerate it. So 5 days training, brutal, and then exactly the same with the rope climb. Just the mileage that he did on the rope, but all from ground zero. That was what was so nice for him, just to accept he's a beginner, and to get there, it's going to be brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, it's just yeah, no, it's just really eye-opening, like what he was, the lengths at which he was willing to go. And so like like I saw you, and you're very supportive of him the entire time, but you're also like very real practical. It's like this is very dangerous stuff for attempting. So like between the swim and the rope climb, was the swim like that much more concerning to you, or was?
Oh, that is a good question, Rohan, just because I think the swim, I knew what could go wrong, but we might have seen signs that things were going wrong, like hypothermia creeping in and things like that. So I was really concerned about the swim, but I was probably more concerned about the rope climb. Reason being, when you start looking at somebody's kinetic chains, how the muscles, joints, and everything work cohesively together, on a rope climb, you can snap a bicep tendon so easily. So I suppose with the rope climb, things could have gone very wrong very quickly, whereas on the ice swim, things would have gone wrong slightly slower. So I was a little bit more concerned about the rope climb. However, just the amount of training that he did, the rope training to coincide with THOR as well, he just built this almost just bulletproof body. Like although his biceps obviously get a lot of airtime on in films and stuff like that, they're also just bulletproof. And I almost call him like this thoroughbred horse, because you see in the series, I just flogged him. I was just like constantly cracking the whip. And he would come back for more. He'd wake up the next day and go, cool, what are we doing today? And it was the same on the ice swim. A lot of people would have just tapped out and gone, no. Whereas it was his ability to just suffer really within the realms of sports science that was most impressive as a coach, I think.
Awesome. And yeah, so like you're saying, like when you're shocking the system like that with that cold water, because I think he was going from cold water to like the sauna and then back and forth, and then you're just like you keep like, and then you also get with like Luke and Liam and all and Zaki and all his friends and stuff. And so like, well, how often would you say like should you shock your system like that? Like I know you said like 30 seconds at the end of a shower can even make a big difference, but like how frequently? So like someone like myself maybe like just like get like acclimated, because obviously I'm not like Chris Hemsworth's physique, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, do you know what, Ryan? With when looking, Chris was just basically an extreme example. Like the whole show was so amazing, so entertaining. But it's like you don't have to swim in an Arctic fjord. That's not what we're getting at.
Mhm.
And I think just that cold shower, just 30 seconds afterwards, whether even if it's 3 days a week, that still is triggering that body's response, like that anti-inflammatories, like boosting the immune system. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, that it's just understanding that we humans, I talk about this before, that so many people now, go to the gym, you say, what are you training? They'll say, I'm training biceps, I'm training glutes, I'm training abs. No one ever goes into the gym, into a plunge pool and says, today I'm training the vasoconstriction of my capillaries and boosting my immune system. Like, people are like, what do you mean? But it's just as valuable. So I think that's what I love about the series, that Chris is going to get people thinking beyond sort of repetitions and weights. It's like, no, there are other adaptations within the body that exist far beyond the gym.
Yeah. And so like expanding on that a little bit, it's like as we go into like I was reading a little bit about your work, and it's like as we go into the winter months, like how do you sort of acclimate to like the winters? Like are you still like are you like increasing frequencies like but for shorter duration outdoors, or because going inside of a gym you're kind of constricting yourself to a certain environment, but like if you're outside you don't know if it's going to be a little chilly or a little windy or what, like different elements. How do you
That is
sort of
that is it. That is exactly that. That I think so often, I think with cold acclimatization, it's actually about looking at the different variables. So when you're in a shower and you're turning it on just for 30 seconds, you're controlling all of the variables. It's basically just you and a shower head. If you want to then expand beyond that, there are then plunge pools. Again, you're quite strictly controlling the variables there because you're just plunging into an ice bath and the water's quite still around you. If you then want to actually sort of evolve beyond that, you can go into a lake, a river, but there you need to understand that the water is quite often moving around you. So if it's moving around you, that there's almost like, it's like wind chill. It can be cold outside, but with the wind it's even colder. Not only that, you're then wading into the water, so there's that vasoconstriction of your capillaries, so your arms are going to feel like lead, your feet are going to feel like they've got lead weights on. And then if you really want to take it further, there are Arctic fjords, there's swimming around Scotland, and then that's when you start to look at tides, wind, waves, jellyfish, sea life that's not always friendly. So, there's degrees of it really, and it just depends what you want to train for. Because a lot of people might just say, I just want the physiological adaptation, and also mentally, it helps me. That release of endorphins. It's like, well, if that's what you want, 30 seconds of cold shower is more than enough. But if people turn around and say, well, actually, I want to start looking to ice swim, that's when you need to almost go through those tiers, those level of difficulty.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love working out outside in the cold, but no, it sucks but afterwards you feel amazing. And then so like
True.
you worked a lot with Chris, like bulking him up for Thor: Love and Thunder, and then he also had that ankle injury that we see in episode I think 4 or 5, and so but then you also had to get him back. You had to cut him back down so he could actually do the rope climb. Otherwise, he's going to be way too heavy. So like, what kind of can you just like maybe like elaborate a little bit on what that whole like 6 to 8 month process was like, bulking him up and then bringing him back down?
Yeah. Well, what was interesting actually, Rohan, is he climbed the rope Thor size, so there wasn't necessarily that the bulking up and slimming down all that much between those two roles. So I think what I loved about that, and I said that on the episode, that I think Chris said, "I'm going to be Thor size. Is that good or bad?" And I said, "Well, it's terrible. Like, at 110 kilos." People don't climb 100-foot ropes dangling 1,000 foot from the blue mountain. You just don't do that. An Olympic gymnast, for instance, will be 55, 60 kilos. So Chris was essentially two of them glued together, climbing a 100-foot rope. So when you are basically looking at an athlete and an actor hybrid like Chris, you go, well, we need to be that size. We can't really like manipulate your body weight. So the only other alternative we have is to make him more physically robust and stronger, so he's able to carry himself up there. And I think that's why, like I said, I talk about that bulletproof biceps, that if Chris hadn't done the work and just those hours on the rope, it's almost like, I call it almost horsepower programming, because it's just this like slow, methodical, just getting the work in, hours on there. Then he would have actually pulled a bicep tendon or something. But it was just the fact that he was so physically robust that the end result was a successful rope climb despite being 110 kilos.
Oh, awesome. And so like well, something I was a little surprised by after his ankle, because I didn't think about it initially, but he was always rubbing his wrist. Because I'm not sure if the rope climb is difficult on those joint areas. So like as you were training him throughout this process, like how did you work on sort of strengthening the ankle joint and the and sort of his wrists and all that stuff, just to get him those muscles that he might not be like thinking about, but those are the ones he really needs in this challenge?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, just because I think so often, certainly in sports science, people think of weight training as improving the strength of your muscles, whereas in reality, resistance or any stress and stimuli to the joints can also improve ligament and tendon strength. It's called mechanotransduction. So I think it was really good to get him to think beyond that, rather than just these big, amazing muscles that look great on a film set or on a beach. It's like we want the small, intricate muscles as well. And I think, again, to build those so often, especially on a rope climb, because it's a really unique movement, it's just in sports science, you call it the SAID principle. So the specific adaptation to imposed demands. And all that means is you get really, really, really good at what you repeatedly practice. So if you want to be better at golf, you don't take up tennis. No,
Mm.
you start swinging, got that's
Yeah.
you drill those motor patterns really specific. So I think for Chris, and I loved how it was captured on Limitless. It was the unavoidable truth was, if you want to get good at rope climbing, you need to live on the rope. And you see Elsa and his kids as well. It was a real family sort of affair that when Chris, it was like, right, he's doing 4 hours on the rope and he'd just disappear. And we'd bring him his food and he would just be eating his food while disappearing up and down. And he knew that if he didn't do that, like I said, things could go very wrong very quickly. And I think that was just a testament to, again, his work ethic, that it was brutal. The conditioning, again, it made no sense. He needed to bulk up like a heavyweight mixed martial artist or rugby player, or NFL player, but then train like an Olympic gymnast. Made no sense. But what he did, that's why, as a coach and as a friend, I was blown away. It really puts him in that 0.0001% of athletes that could have done that.
That's amazing, and that's something I also noticed about you is like, you like I mentioned earlier, like the very positive self-talk, and you can kind of see like the real-time effects is like when you're doing the rope climb and he freezes for a moment, and you're just like, yeah, that's the worst thing you can do, and you're just like kind of encouraging and getting him to back going, and the same thing with the swim. It's like so like throughout your career, and it's like, what kind of like immediate effects have you seen from the positive self-talk? Well, not only on yourself, but like through coaching. It's like it makes like such a big difference, or that much of a difference.
Yeah, John, again, like, I'm glad you picked up on that, just because I think what was so nice about Chris, and again, it's a testament to his character, is it was just tough love, like, and he would respond so well to it. So logically, he knew, as you said, on the rope, I wasn't shouting, it was just as a friend, as a coach, I was like, you're not resting, like that's the worst thing you can do. And certainly on that, for instance, knowing, even with Chris has a martial arts background as well. And there's so many times where he will just bite down on his mouthpiece and just start swinging. He's almost, you've got that dog in you. And
Mm.
some athletes have it, some don't. And I think on that rope climb, there was that one point where I say, right, it's no longer a rope climb, it's a fight. And we do not lose fights. And that's when he was like, right, okay, why didn't you say so? And it's like, right, technique goes out the window. How much do you want it now? And that can be taught to an extent, but I think a lot of people are just they just have it. And I think Chris just has it. You saw it in the ice swim, but you also saw it in the rope climb, that a lot of people, what he'd achieved up until those points, if he'd have tapped out, that was still an amazing effort. But Chris, he just holds himself in such high expectations of himself. And just the end, I mean, you see on the rope climb, I just got goosebumps. I was almost crying, because it was months and miles on the rope. And what you saw there wasn't just a 100-foot rope climb. It was the sum and substance of so many hours of strength and conditioning. So I think that's why me and Chris were a little bit emotional towards the end.
Awesome. And so I don't want to keep you too long, but so like when you're if you the Chris is like you said like one of one, but like if you're coaching someone like myself who's like, I mean, I run, I mostly do endurance training myself, but it's like what are some actionable goals that you would give for like a normal person, or like relatively active, but versus someone who's like, just trying to stay healthy, and like, as like the point of the series is kind of like age more gracefully and be in like 20 years from now, it's like, hey, all the stuff I did 20 years ago is like paying off now.
Oh, so the goal is longevity. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
longevity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's a few different ones. One is, strength training in any capacity. I think so often people sort of say, I don't like powerlifting, I don't like Olympic lifting, I don't like strong. It's like, that's fine. Pick one that you want to do. Calisthenics, body weight, it doesn't matter. Because I think sort of, certainly more recently looking at behavioral science, like the best workout in the world is useless on paper if you can't actually follow it. So it's destined to fail if you're not going to enjoy it. So I think that's one to begin with, just making sure that you enjoy it. Secondly, I think too often people don't have a clear cellular signal that they're sending to their body. What I mean by that, Robert Hickson and his studies in molecular biology are amazing. Basically, he looked at concurrent training, when you train for strength, speed, and stamina all in one session. And he found that you, and I quote, dilute the potency of the stimuli. What I mean by that is I think too many people go to the gym and they will run 20 minutes on a treadmill, stamina, aerobic fitness, nothing wrong with that. But then they see their friend training biceps. So they run over and they start training biceps. That's your body's ability to generate force. And then they might go and jump in and do a boxercise class or MMA, jiu-jitsu, which is slightly more anaerobic. So your body leaves going, what did you want us to adapt to? What was the cellular signal? You've diluted the potency of the stimuli. So I think so often, and I love that we covered this so much in Limitless, brilliantly done by Peter Tier, which is just, what are you training for? And I think if you can't say that in a single sentence, it's your body doesn't understand the cellular signal. What I mean by that is if somebody is running on a treadmill, zone 2, so their heart rate's not going over 120, 130 beats per minute, and you stop somebody and say, what are you doing? And they go, Zone 2 training, 45 minutes to improve mitochondrial efficiency. It's so specific. And you go, brilliant. Or you see somebody over in the corner and they're powerlifting and you say, sorry, can I stop you? What are you doing? And they say, strength training, my body's ability to generate force to combat atrophy and sarcopenia later in life. You go, amazing, so specific. So whatever you're doing in the gym, make sure you're sending a clear cellular signal to the body to adapt based on studies in molecular biology. That was a long
one. Yeah, awesome, Ross. Thank you. This has been so great. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Rohan, mate.
It's great to meet you.
You too. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you so much, Rohan. Have a good
Thank
day.
you, Sam.